They told me I was not invited to Christmas. But they did not expect me to be the one holding their mortgage. They did not expect me to turn their laughter into panic. They did not expect a grandfather to take revenge on Christmas Day. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Harold Bennett. I am 74 years old, a widower, and I have spent every Christmas of my life surrounded by family. At least, until last year. For most of my life, Christmas was the heartbeat of our family. I grew up in a 2-bedroom farmhouse in northern Illinois, where my father would cut a pine tree from our own land and drag it into the living room while my mother hummed carols. We had little, coal heat that never quite kept the cold out, stockings filled with oranges and peppermint sticks, but we had togetherness. That mattered more than anything. When I married Linda, my wife of 50 years, we carried that spirit into our own home. She was the kind of woman who could make a store-bought pie taste like it came straight from heaven, just by the way she set it on the table. She had an eye for small traditions, snowflake-shaped cookies that only came out once a year, the handmade ornaments our children made in school, the rule that no one could open a present until we had read the Christmas story aloud. We had 2 children, Matthew and Caroline. Caroline, my eldest, was my free spirit, always the first to drag the tree out of storage, always the last to finish hanging ornaments because she insisted on telling stories about each one. She moved out west years ago, settled in Oregon, and though distance kept her away more often than I liked, she never forgot to call. She would send boxes of homemade jam or knitted scarves that smelled faintly of her wood stove. Matthew stayed close. He was my son, my pride, my heir to the Bennett stubborn streak. I bought him his first tool set when he was 9, taught him to change a tire before he was old enough to drive, co-signed the loan when he wanted a house for his growing family. I believed in him the way fathers are supposed to, without hesitation, without condition. When Linda passed 6 winters ago, I thought Matthew would step into the space she left behind, not as my wife but as my closest family anchor. Caroline grieved from afar, calling often, her voice shaky but determined. But Matthew was here, in the same town, with Sandra, his wife, and their 2 little ones, Lily and Ben. I poured myself into helping them. Fixing leaky gutters, babysitting at the drop of a hat, and, though I rarely mentioned it, quietly covering the mortgage payments when money got tight. Because that's what fathers do. And for years, Christmas in their house felt like my reward. I was grandpa with the booming laugh, carving the turkey, handing out presents from beneath the tree, sneaking candy canes to Lily when Sandra wasn't looking. Every year, as the lights twinkled and the children's eyes sparkled, I thought, this is what Linda would have wanted. Until last year. After that call, I sat in my recliner long into the night, staring at the twinkling lights of the tree I had decorated by myself. The ornaments were the same ones Linda and I had collected through 50 years of marriage, glass baubles from our honeymoon, hand-painted stars the kids made in grade school, a ceramic angel she'd insisted on buying at a church fair the year Caroline was born. Now they hung there in silence, waiting for laughter that would never come. Part of me wondered if I should just let it go. Maybe Sandra was right, maybe there really wasn't enough space. Maybe Matthew was just trying to keep peace between families. Linda would have told me to be patient, to forgive. That was her way. She believed people came around in time if you gave them enough grace. But I wasn't Linda. And I wasn't sure forgiveness was still in me. Still, I argued with myself in that empty room. What good would revenge do? It wouldn't bring Linda back. It wouldn't make Matthew the boy he once was. Maybe I should swallow my pride, accept the crumbs they gave me, and keep the peace for the sake of my grandchildren. I almost convinced myself. Almost. Then, 2 nights later, fate stepped in. I was driving past their neighborhood on my way back from the grocery store. The snow was falling, thick and heavy, the kind that muffles sound and makes the world feel smaller. Their house stood glowing with Christmas lights, music faint through the frosted windows. For a moment, I considered just driving on. But then I saw Matthew's truck in the driveway, Sandra's parents' rental car beside it, and I slowed. I don't know what possessed me to stop. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was that gnawing instinct that I had been lied to. I parked down the street and walked quietly toward the house, boots crunching in the snow. Their dining room window was cracked open, letting out warmth and the smell of roast ham. I moved closer, close enough to hear. Sandra's voice carried first, "It's so much easier without him here. Honestly, he's just awkward around my parents. Always bringing up the past, always trying to make himself important." Laughter followed. Her mother's laugh, high and sharp, cut me like glass. Then Matthew spoke. "My son. My boy. You're right. He doesn't really fit in anymore. He's had his time. It's better this way." I gripped the side of their fence until my knuckles turned white. Sandra's father chimed in, his voice smug. "Besides, once he's gone, truly gone, this house will be yours outright. No more strings attached. You'll be free to make it your own. Free to make it your own." I felt something inside me go cold, colder than the snow on my shoulders. They weren't just pushing me out of a holiday. They were waiting me out like vultures circling. Counting down the days until I was no longer a man to them, just an inheritance. In that moment, the debate inside me ended. Revenge wasn't a choice anymore. It was the only way to remind them who had built the foundation they stood on. I stepped back from the window, heart pounding, and walked into the night with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. By the morning of Christmas Day, my mind was no longer wandering in circles. The ache of loneliness had hardened into something steadier. Resolve. I sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a pen, the same tools I'd once used to draft budgets when the mill was on strike and every dollar had to stretch. Now, I made a different kind of list. At the top, I wrote one word, house. Under it, I listed everything I still held power over. My name was on the deed, the mortgage, the insurance policy. I had receipts and bank statements tucked neatly in a fireproof box under my bed. If Matthew and Sandra thought I was nothing more than a silent benefactor, they were about to learn the truth. Every brick in that suburban palace of theirs still leaned against my name. I began drafting phone numbers to call after the holiday, the bank, the insurance agent, my lawyer. The steps formed clearly in my head: freeze the automatic payments, shift the insurance coverage, make a formal review of the ownership. By the end of it, I would not be the forgotten man they believed I was. I would be the ghost in every corner of their home, the name on every envelope they dreaded opening. But even as the plan took shape, my hand hesitated over the paper. Because in the back of my mind, there were two faces that kept me from plunging all the way into revenge: Lily and Ben. My grandchildren. They had no part in this. They were just children, bright-eyed and trusting. Lily with her endless questions about the world, Ben with the gap-toothed smile that reminded me of Matthew when he was small. They were the last fragile string tethering me to hope. So before I called the bank, I picked up the phone and dialed their number. It rang 5 times before someone answered. It was Lily, her voice rushed, excited. "Grandpa." For a moment, my heart lifted. I could hear the noise of wrapping paper and laughter in the background. "Hello, sweetheart," I said, forcing cheer into my voice. "Did Santa treat you well?" "Yes. He brought me a dollhouse with lights, and Ben got a train set. Mommy says we're having a big dinner later with—" Her voice cut off suddenly, muffled, as if someone had taken the phone away. I could hear Sandra's clipped tone in the background. "Who are you talking to? Give me that, please." Then Matthew's voice, low but firm: "Dad, this isn't a good time." I swallowed. I just wanted to wish the kids Merry Christmas. They're excited. They're distracted. "It's better if you don't call right now," Matthew said. "We'll talk later." And then the line went dead. I sat there, the dial tone humming like an insult in my ear. I set the phone down gently, but inside, my last doubts collapsed. If they wouldn't even let me speak to my grandchildren on Christmas Day, then I truly had no place in their lives, except the one I would carve for myself. I looked back at the list on the table, and for the first time that season, I smiled. A slow, grim smile. They thought they had silenced me. They thought I was powerless. But soon, they would learn I was the one pulling the strings all along. The day after Christmas, I rose earlier than usual. The house was still cold, the frost on the windows silvering the morning light, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. I brewed a pot of coffee, sat at the table with my list, and began making the calls. The bank first. Mr. Bennett, the representative said after verifying my account, we can certainly suspend your automatic payments. You're not obligated to continue covering another party's mortgage. Another party, I repeated, almost amused. Yes. Suspend them effective immediately. I could almost hear the chains snapping in my head as the woman confirmed the change. Next, the insurance agent. I explained that the property in question was still co-owned, and that I wished to transfer full authority of the policy to myself. We'll need signatures from the other party eventually, the agent cautioned, but you're well within your rights to make adjustments in the meantime. Perfect. One lever pulled. Several more waiting. But even as I crossed items off my list, I felt a tug in my chest. A voice reminding me that revenge, once started, doesn't always stop where you want it to. So I picked up the phone again, but this time, I dialed Oregon. Caroline answered on the third ring. Dad? Is everything okay? Just the sound of her voice, steady and warm, nearly undid me. She was the one who had never turned her back, who still sent me hand-knit scarves and jars of homemade jam. I'm fine, I said. Or at least, I will be. I need to tell you something. I told her everything. Sandra's call. The window. The words I overheard. The way Matthew cut me off when I tried to wish the kids Merry Christmas. There was a long silence on the line, and then Caroline spoke softly, her voice trembling with anger. I wish I could say I was surprised, Dad. But I've seen how Sandra talks about you. Always making little digs. And Matthew, he lets her. He's not the brother I grew up with anymore. I pressed my fingers to my temple. Do you think I'm wrong, Caroline? For wanting to strike back. For wanting them to feel what I've felt. She exhaled, the sound of her breath carrying across the miles. Dad, you've carried that family for years. Paid for that house. Supported them through everything. If they've chosen to erase you, then maybe it's time they learn who really holds the cards. Just, be careful. Don't let anger turn you into someone you're not. Her words steadied me. She wasn't pushing me toward vengeance, but she wasn't stopping me either. She understood. Thank you, sweetheart, I said quietly. For still seeing me. You'll always be my dad, she replied. Even if Matthew's forgotten. When the call ended, I sat in silence for a while. My hands shook, but not from doubt anymore. From clarity. I picked up my pen and underlined the final note on my list, lawyer. It was time to set the real wheels in motion. I pulled up to the familiar brick building on Oak Street, Henderson and Mayfield, attorneys at law. Mr. Henderson had retired years ago, but his son, David, now ran the practice. I had known him since he was a boy, back when he used to mow my lawn for pocket change. He greeted me with a warm handshake, though his eyes carried the subtle alertness of a man who sensed business more serious than pleasantries. Mr. Bennett, he said, guiding me into his office. What brings you in after Christmas? I sat down across from him, leaning forward. David, I need to make some changes. Quiet changes. And I need them airtight. His brows lifted. All right. Tell me what's going on. I laid it out, not with bitterness in my voice but with the cold precision of a man who had nothing left to lose. The house, the mortgage, the insurance, the inheritance. Matthew's silence. Sandra's words. The vultures circling. David listened without interruption, jotting notes on his legal pad. When I finished, he tapped his pen against the paper. "You've done more for them than anyone could reasonably expect. And from what you're describing, they're not just ungrateful, they're planning ahead for when you're gone." "That's exactly it," I said. "They think I'm already fading. But I'm not gone yet. And I want to make damn sure they understand that." He nodded slowly. "All right. Here's what we can do." He outlined the plan with the kind of precision that made me proud to still have some fight left in me. Step 1, freeze all financial contributions officially. He'd draft a letter to the bank, on his letterhead, confirming that I was withdrawing support. That would place the full burden squarely on Matthew and Sandra, and without warning, since they'd grown used to my silent payments. Step 2, create a living trust. The house and all properties tied to my name would be transferred into it, with Caroline listed as the successor trustee. That meant if anything happened to me, control went directly to her, not Matthew. He would be cut off from the very asset he assumed would be his birthright. Step 3, adjust the insurance policy. David would draft a clause making me the sole beneficiary of coverage on the property, ensuring that no matter what happened, the payout would flow through my estate, not into their greedy hands. Step 4, the will. This was where the knife twisted. I'd rewrite it entirely, removing Matthew and Sandra from any benefit and leaving everything to Caroline and the grandchildren directly. That way, even if Sandra tried to manipulate through Matthew, there would be nothing for her to sink her claws into. And to really drive it home, David added, we can include a no-contest clause. If Matthew tries to challenge it in court, he forfeits any claim entirely. It's a way of telling him, fight this, and you lose everything. I sat back in the chair, letting the weight of the plan settle into me. It wasn't just revenge, it was justice, forged into paperwork. Make it happen, I said firmly. David gave me a long look, the kind a man gives when he sees someone stepping into a different skin. I'll draft everything this week. Quietly. No one will know until you want them to. When I left his office, the air outside felt different. Sharper. Cleaner. For the first time in weeks, I walked with my head high, my boots crunching the snow like each step was an oath. They had pushed me out of Christmas, but I had just pushed them out of their future. And they didn't even know it yet. While I was meeting with my lawyer, Matthew and Sandra were posting pictures. I know, because Caroline sent them to me. She'd seen Sandra's updates on social media and thought I should know what they were saying about me. There they were, smiling in front of the 12-foot tree I had helped them buy last year, their matching sweaters gleaming with sequins. Sandra's parents were in the frame too, holding champagne glasses high. And the caption, God help me, the caption read. Best Christmas yet. So thankful for real family and new traditions. Real family. Caroline added only 2 words in her message, I'm sorry. I stared at those photos for a long time. Sandra leaning into Matthew like she'd conquered some prize. My son, laughing, his arm around her shoulders, as though this holiday had been flawless, perfect, without me. Not a shadow of guilt on his face. Not a thought spared for the man who had built the foundation beneath that very roof. That night, they sat by the fire, their children tearing through new toys, the stockings Linda had sewn decades ago hanging by the mantel. They thought they'd succeeded in rewriting Christmas, erasing me from the frame. Meanwhile, across town, I sat at my kitchen table with David's draft document spread neatly before me. The living trust. The revised will. The no-contest clause that would slam shut like iron if Matthew ever tried to fight it. My pen hovered above the page for only a second before I signed, my name steady and sure. The contrast could not have been clearer. In their house, laughter, clinking glasses, smug words about real family. In mine, silence, steady breathing, the sound of ink scratching across paper as I removed their future one signature at a time. When I sealed the envelope and slid it across my table, I felt no guilt. Only clarity. They thought Christmas was theirs. But what they didn't know was that I had already written the ending of this story. And when they discovered it, their joy would turn to ash. The letter arrived on a Thursday. I didn't tell them it was coming. I didn't even warn Caroline, though I knew she would hear about it soon enough. I simply signed the papers, sealed the documents, and let the world turn until the trap snapped shut. At 7:42 in the morning, my phone rang. Matthew's number. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, Sandra called. Straight to voicemail again. By the time I poured my second cup of coffee, my phone was vibrating non-stop on the table. 10 missed calls. 12. 15. Finally, I answered. Matthew's voice was frantic, high-pitched in a way I hadn't heard since he was a boy who'd just broken a neighbor's window. Dad, what the hell is this? I stayed calm, stirring sugar into my cup. Good morning, Matthew. Don't play games with me, he snapped. The bank called. They said you canceled the payments. They said we're responsible now. And the lawyer's letter, his words tumbled over each other. What did you do, Dad? What did you sign? I took a slow sip. I stopped doing your job for you. That's all. Sandra's voice broke in from the background, shrill and furious. He's lying. He's trying to ruin us. Tell him we'll fight this, tell him he can't do this to us. I let her screech echo through the receiver before I answered, voice steady as a stone. I can, and I did. Silence, then Matthew again, lower now, almost pleading. Dad, come on. You can't just cut us out. You know we've counted on you. You can't mean to give everything to Caroline. Not after everything I've done for this family. That made me laugh, an ugly, bitter laugh that startled even me. Everything you've done. Matthew, I built your roof. I paid your debts. I kept your house standing while you sat in silence and let your wife tell me I didn't belong. You want to talk about what's been done for this family? Start with 50 years of sacrifice. Then maybe you'll understand why the ink is already dry. Sandra must have grabbed the phone, because suddenly it was her voice hissing in my ear. You selfish old man. You'll regret this. No, I said quietly. You will. And I hung up. The house was silent again, save for the faint ticking of the old wall clock. But this time, the silence felt different. Not empty. Not hollow. It felt like victory. Across town, in their glittering suburban palace, Matthew and Sandra were no longer celebrating the best Christmas yet. They were staring at legal documents with their hands shaking, realizing the man they thought they'd cast aside was still the one holding the strings. And when the day came that the truth spread through the family, they would have to answer one question from everyone who heard the story. How could you forget who built the very life you live in? A month later, I sat in Caroline's kitchen in Oregon, a mug of her blackberry tea warming my hands. Snow was falling outside her window, the kind that comes soft and slow, blanketing the world without hurry. Lily and Ben were there too. Caroline had flown them out after Sandra's fury boiled over. They need to know what real family looks like, Caroline had said, and she was right. The children sat at the table coloring, their chatter filling the room with the very music my house had been missing. Caroline touched my arm gently. Do you regret it, Dad? Cutting Matthew out like that? I thought about it for a long moment. About Linda's voice, always preaching forgiveness. About the years of silence, the sacrifices unnoticed, the way Sandra's laughter had cut me to the bone that night at the window. No, I said finally. I regret raising a son who forgot his roots. But I don't regret protecting what's left of this family. Caroline squeezed my hand. Then you did the right thing. The children's laughter swelled in the background, bright and unburdened. And for the first time since Linda's passing, I felt something other than loss. I felt peace. And that was enough.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.